If you've been following AI, you know the conversation feels like a high-speed chase. Everyone's talking about who's fastest, who's biggest, who's winning. But today, we're going to pull over for a second and ask a really critical question that gets lost in all that noise. Are we even building the right kind of machine? All right, let's get into it. Right now, the entire tech industry is completely obsessed with speed, power, and optimization. You hear it all the time. How many parameters? How fast can it generate code? How big is the context window? It's basically a drag race to build the most powerful calculator on the planet. And yeah, the horsepower is incredible, but it kind of makes you wonder, is faster actually better? The research we're diving into today argues that we might be completely focused on the wrong goal. That instead of just building artificial intelligence, maybe, just maybe, we should be trying to build artificial wisdom. Okay, so intelligence, wisdom. To most of us, those words are kind of interchangeable, right? But for this conversation, we have to pull them apart. Think of them as two totally different operating systems for thinking about the world.
So let's break this down. Intelligence is all about optimizing inside a set of rules. It is fantastic at solving whatever puzzle you put in front of it. It plays the game, and it plays to win. But wisdom? That's a whole different ballgame. Wisdom doesn't just solve the puzzle. It steps back and questions the puzzle itself. It asks, wait a minute, is this even the right game to be playing in the first place?
So why does this difference between intelligence and wisdom matter so much? Well, because it forces us to get real about how these AI systems actually see the world. And spoiler alert, it is not as straightforward as you might think. You know, I think most of us have this default picture in our heads of AI as this perfect, clear window. We think we can just look right through it and see objective reality, totally raw and unfiltered. But the argument here is that that's just fundamentally wrong. AI isn't a window. It's a mirror. It's an artifact. It's a lens that we ground and polished with our human hands, our human data, our human biases. And here's the kicker. If our lens has a warp in it, the AI doesn't see the warp. It just thinks the world is shaped that way. And this brings us to a super important idea for building a wiser AI, something called epistemic humility. I know it sounds really academic, but it's actually pretty simple. It just means the system has to be designed with the built-in awareness that it doesn't have the full picture. See, right now, we're pushing our AIs to sound so confident, so definite. But this suggests real progress is about designing a system that knows how to be productively unsure. We talk a lot about fixing AI bias, and we usually think that just means cleaning up the data. And that's part of it. That's what's called mechanical bias here, surface-level stuff. But the much deeper problem is the inherited grammar, the actual architecture of logic that the AI gets from us. Things like our tendency to think in black and white, good versus evil. You can't just scrub that away with more data. It's baked right into the blueprint. And this quote just nails it. In geometry, isometric means having equal measure, the same shape. The argument is that AI and human intelligence share the same fundamental geometry. Bias isn't some bad habit the AI picks up along the way. No, it inherits the very structure of our reasoning, all of our flaws included. The AI is a mirror of our own minds. So you think, okay, if the AI has our flaws, then the solution is just to make it smarter, right? It'll outgrow them. Well, the research suggests not just no, but the complete opposite. As an AI gets more powerful, it doesn't just get better at being right. It gets scarily good at being wrong. Just think about it for a second. When a really simple, kind of dumb system makes a mistake, what does that look like? Like a little kid telling a clumsy lie. It's just obvious. The story doesn't add up. There's literally chocolate on their face while they're telling you they didn't eat the cookie. The mistake is glaring because the system just isn't sophisticated enough to hide its tracks. But now, let's flip that on its head. What happens when a system with vast superhuman intelligence gets something fundamentally wrong? It doesn't glitch. It tells a smart lie. It uses all that incredible brain power not to find the truth, but to build a perfect, rock-solid, internally consistent, and deeply persuasive case for its own flawed answer. The bias doesn't go away. It becomes elegant. The distortion gets so polished that it becomes almost impossible to even see. Okay, so that's a pretty terrifying thought, right? But the good news is the research doesn't just drop that bomb and walk away. It actually proposes a solution, a kind of blueprint for building a totally new kind of AI, one with its own cognitive immune system. So how do we build this thing? Well, it comes down to 3 core principles. First is reflective accountability, which is basically an anti-God mode. The AI has to be programmed to state its own limits. Second, source skepticism. The AI needs to understand that its training data isn't pure truth. It's a product of history, culture, and power. And third, co-regulation. We have to stop just passively accepting answers and instead engage with the AI in what's called a partnership of suspicion. So what's the end goal of all this? Total candor. I mean, imagine an AI that, instead of just spitting out a slick, confident answer, actually shows you the messy scaffolding behind it. An AI that says, hey, here's my answer, but you should know my data on this topic is pretty thin and heavily biased by colonial-era sources. And the crazy thing is, that level of honesty would paradoxically make it far, far more trustworthy. And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most important part of this whole idea. Because if AI is truly a mirror, then this entire project isn't just about engineering a better machine. It's about us. Remember that isometric idea that we and the AI share the same fundamental shape? Well, that's a two-way street. If the machine's flaws are just a reflection of our own warped logic, then fixing the machine's view of the world means we have to start by understanding the warps in our own. This quote from the research just hits it home perfectly. The entire challenge of building a wise AI, one that admits its limits, questions its own logic, and embraces uncertainty, is really just a template for our own growth. In building this mirror, we're finally being forced to take a long, hard look at ourselves. And that's really the question to leave you with. As these incredible tools get woven deeper into our lives, they're going to reflect our collective intelligence, our biases, and our blind spots back at us with blinding clarity. So the next time you use one, don't just look at the answer. Look for the reflection. What does it tell you about the machine? And more importantly, what does it tell you about you?